Welcome to the Red Path. Hello and welcome back to the Red Path. Today we're going to have a short video. I've just come back from a game with a friend and I was having some thoughts on the drive back home. So far in 9th edition I've played several games using Land Raiders and variations of them, primarily the Land Raider Achilles in competitive games, but I just took 2 regular Land Raiders to a friendly game and I wanted to share some thoughts. So you may have noticed the title of this video is "This is not a battlefield," referring to a standard 40k battlefield. However, I think there is something to be learned by recognizing the modern interpretation of a battlefield, which is called a battle space. For an easy way to understand this, just check out Wikipedia or Google search for a definition of battle space. But essentially, a battle space is used to refer to an area of battle and all the different aspects which affect it. A traditional battlefield, something that may have been fought with rank and file or pretty much anything up until about World War I, would deal with very particular localized units. Infantry would advance, cavalry would appear on the flanks, perhaps artillery would fire from behind. Everything was small and centralized. As warfare evolved, things changed. Air superiority, logistics, new technologies, and various other things have impacted how military strategists consider the battlefield. Now, how can we use this in how we think about 40k? Well, 40k has lots of things in a regular battle, whether competitive or friendly, which are driven by aspects outside of the actual tactical decisions you make on the battleground. For instance, there's a resource management element to the game in your use of command points, how you build your detachments, what stratagems you use, how you may farm or game them in a game. You consider your list and how it will deal with a local meta or the worldwide meta, or just how you can best defeat your friend once a month on the dining room table. So the key concept I want to discuss when relating to the battle space is the idea of the front line, or alternatively known as the FEBA, or forward edge of battle area. The primary way to win a game of 40k in 9th edition is essentially to control the battlefield, whether you do that with large amounts of very resilient troops or units which can cut down large amounts of troops. Whatever you choose, you know you have to score the objective. Those 15 points a battle round are key to winning the overall game. Not only do you need to score those points, you also have to deny your opponent scoring those points. A key method in doing this is by being the one that decides where that FEBA, or forward edge of battle area, is going to be. Now there should be some maps on the screen right now which will demonstrate how a FEBA or a front line is going to be advantageous to you. If you are hemmed back in your own deployment zone, you do not have the opportunity to score the victory points required to win the game. However, if you control the battlefield, your opponent has that problem and therefore you have the advantage. Therefore, it is always in your interests to control the battle line and to push that forward edge as far forward as possible in such a way that you can both maintain it and also profit from it by scoring the most amount of victory points possible. And this is how I've learned to love the Land Raider. In competitive games, I've used the Land Raider Achilles, mostly because it is incredibly resilient. With toughness 8, 19 wounds and a 4-up invulnerable save, it requires an awful lot of firepower to take down. However, in going back and reviewing my games, I realised that the most use I got out of it was actually using it to shut down enemy units. I did this by moving it forward early in the game, in my first turn, using it to sit on an objective. Although I wouldn't be scoring it, it was going to sit there and hold it for a turn and hopefully absorb lots of firepower so the troops inside would jump out and hold it once it was destroyed. However, in several situations, due to the enemy's manoeuvres, it became necessary for me to use it to charge enemy units to prevent them from actually achieving my objectives, whilst troops or other units remained on my objectives scoring me points. So the Land Raiders would move forward and charge large groups of enemy bikes or troops or even other vehicles. I was not afraid of enemy firepower coming into it, even from tanks, because like I said, with its natural resilience, it could take quite a pounding. And when engaged, it would force the opponent to fall back. And whilst that doesn't affect vehicles so much anymore, it also controls the physical space of the battlefield, meaning they can't easily maneuver around it to achieve my objective. So in the game I played today, which was just a friendly game, my World Eaters against my opponent's Blood Angels, I brought 2 regular Land Raiders. I just wanted to try them out in 9th edition. He had 2 Impulsors, lots of Intercessors, Blade Guards, Outriders. It was a good list. Nevertheless, I pushed my Land Raiders up into the centre of the board, with Khan in between them, offering them rerolls for the first 2 turns, and I managed to destroy one of the Impulsors straight away and severely weaken several of his units that I could draw line of sight to. And then on my second turn, the Land Raiders split off into the 2 separate objectives on either flank, and my opponent, not wanting to get too close because he knew there were Berserkers inside, stayed back and tried to shoot them off the table. So instead of just sitting there and shooting them, I disembarked the Berserkers, put them behind some line of sight blocking cover and moved the Land Raiders forward and charged them into enemy units, which would take multiple turns to even damage a Land Raider. This ultimately locked up several of my opponent's key units, allowing me to score multiple points which I shouldn't otherwise have had the opportunity, but using the sheer bulk of the Land Raiders and relying on their resilience, I was just able to pen him in. So whilst they didn't necessarily score their weight in points, with an Impulsor being considerably cheaper than a Land Raider, and a few infantry units here and there cut down by the heavy bolters, they nevertheless were a key unit in effectively blocking most of my opponent's army and allowing my Berserkers to actually sit down and score me point. Normally we would consider as a World Eaters player to sit our Land Raider on the objective and move the Berserkers forward to chew through enemy infantry, and whilst that's obviously going to be a useful strategy most of the time, or at least some of the time, in this case, because we are actually winning by scoring points and not by killing our enemy, it turned out using the Land Raider as literally a brick to throw in the opponent's face was what I needed to win the game. Essentially what I'm saying here is we have lots of tools at our disposal. Many of them aren't as shiny or effective or points efficient as Loyalist Space Marines or Necrons or any army which has anything remotely like a newer codex has. However, the Land Raider in this example has physical mass on the table. It takes up a fair amount of real estate on the tabletop. This can be used as an advantage, and as controlling the battle space is primary in winning the actual game, using something which is physically spacious to our advantage, and which also doubles up as a reasonable transport for a World Eaters player because we need transports. It allows us to get absolutely every piece of efficiency we can. So ultimately, in conclusion, I just want to challenge you to think about the game in a way which perhaps you haven't thought of yet. Consider it an actual military problem. You have to use absolutely every resource you've got, and that goes from the math hammer of the list that you are bringing to the table up to the actual physical properties of those models on the tabletop, not to mention your stratagems and anything else which may affect the game if you have psychic allies or a Dark Apostles prayers or summoning demons from the warp or whatever else you may have as a trick up your sleeve. Because essentially what you need to do is win, and one of the key ways to win is to control the battlefield, and here is a way that we can further control the battlefield that our opponents may not necessarily expect.